Now to Lebanon, a country dealing with its own sectarian violence. Today, a car bomb exploded just south of Beirut in a stronghold of the Shiite militant group Hezbollah. The blast, which wounded over 50 people, was the worst in the capital's southern suburbs in years. There's been increased tension in Lebanon following Hezbollah's intervention in the Syrian conflict. The BBC's Paul Wood sent this report from Beirut.
The blast was heard across much of Beirut. The bomb was placed in a supermarket car park. It was busy, people shopping for the start of the holy month of Ramadan. There were injuries as windows all around were shattered. The area is controlled by Shiite Hezbollah. It has avoided laying blame for the attack, but Hezbollah sent fighters to help Syria's regime against the rebels there. Many assume this is payback. We are not afraid of this message, believe me, says this man. We're not afraid of bombs, but an attack on the first day of Ramadan is a shameful act. Lebanon has the same Sunni-Shia fault line as Syria. To some, this looks worryingly like the bad old days in Beirut. Of course, what they're trying to do is create sectarian warfare between Sunnis and Shiites, says the Lebanese Interior Minister. I can assure you, he goes on, that neither Sunnis or Shiites will be dragged into it. That may be a forlorn hope as fighting intensifies inside Syria. This is Homs, where the Syrian government is pressing an offensive. Rebel defences in parts of the city appear close to collapse. It's claimed that Hezbollah fighters are involved in this assault too. When the town of Qusair fell with Hezbollah's open involvement, the Free Syrian Army promised to hit back. The rebels did, however, say they would not attack civilian areas, and they have denied involvement in the Beirut car bomb. The area where the bomb exploded was also hit by rockets just over a month ago.
The casualties from the latest incident, were relatively slight, but looking at how built up the area is, it could have been far, far worse. And if the next car bomb does cause fatalities, you're going to see sectarian tensions being ramped up, and then you get into fears about Syria's civil war transferring over the border here to Lebanon. Paul Wood, BBC News, Beirut.
And for more on today's violence, I'm joined now by Hisham Melhem. He's the Washington bureau chief of Al Arabiya. So, Hisham, was this explosion today retaliation against Hezbollah for their role in fighting alongside forces supporting President Assad inside Syria?
This is the consensus in Lebanon. I talked to a number of people today in Lebanon. Everybody's saying this is another indication of the spillover of the conflict in Syria, especially given Hezbollah's major role in the last few weeks in the fighting in Syria, the fall of the town of Qusair, the fall of Tal Kalakh, also close to the Lebanese border. And there's a lot of talk about Hezbollah probably being involved in the fighting in Homs right now. So Hezbollah being the most formidable political military force in Lebanon has alienated the Sunni population, the majority of which also support the rebels in Syria. So what you have now is a deepening sectarian polarization, and it's not an exaggeration to talk about a sectarian cancer eating up the Arab body politics from Iraq to Syria to Lebanon.
That must be extraordinary. And when you think of it, this is a continent you grew up in as a child. What's happened to those old centres of traditional power?
If you're talking about Egypt, if you're talking about Baghdad, I mean Egypt, Cairo, a center of enlightenment in literature and music and cinema in Cairo, Baghdad, the center of culture, publishing, Damascus and Beirut. Now we have three major Arab countries. Their future is uncertain. They're going through a great deal of tumult. Iraq may break up. The Kurds may go their own way. Syria is witnessing one of the bloodiest civil wars in the region in a long time. Nobody knows anything about the future of Syria. Egypt now is in terra incognita, so to speak, and nobody knows how the Egyptian crisis will unfold. And Lebanon, being tiny, small, brittle, politically divided, is in the middle of this maelstrom.
And Lebanon now has nearly 1 million Syrians. What sort of strain is that putting on a country of only 4 million?
Incredible economic strain, incredible social and cultural strain. The country literally could snap literally could snap, and everybody's armed, and you know, against the background, as I said, of the fraying of society, weak political institution, weak brittle political system, armed militias and armed groups. The Syrian crisis could really drag Lebanon into another round of fighting.
And do you see any end to the Syrian conflict in sight at all?
Not anytime soon. I was one of those people who thought that Assad could not survive for more than a year. Obviously, he showed that he has more resilience than many people thought. Assad's friends, the Iranians, Hezbollah, and Russia, are committed to his winning the war. The friends of the opposition, whether the United States, the Arab states, or the Europeans, are pushing them to go to negotiations in Geneva, but they are not as committed to their victory as Assad's friends.
Hisham, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
In other news now.